We only have our small house and the pastry shop, she said hesitantly. Okay, then we'll need the original documents for your house and shop to minimize our risk. Can you bring them now? Scarlet's parents exchanged another nervous glance, and her husband nodded in agreement. Within 20 minutes, she left and returned with the documents. She handed the documents over to the bank manager. He read through them and whispered something in Henry's father's ear. After a while, he cleared his throat and said, "Looking at your house and shop documents, they can't cover your loan. If you fail to pay back the loan, my customer's money would be at risk. However, my customer doesn't seem to care about whether your property can cover your debt or not. He simply wants to help you out. So, you should thank him for his goodwill towards you." Henry's father nodded at his words. The bank manager slid some documents across the table. "You'll need to sign these. If you fail to repay the loan within the agreed time, the bank has the right to seize your properties." Scarlet's father took a deep breath, looking at the papers in front of him. He knew the risk, but what choice did they have? He picked up the pen with unsteady fingers and signed. His wife followed suit. Once the paperwork was complete, Henry's father handed them the money. Scarlet's mother bowed slightly, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. We will repay every penny." Henry's father merely nodded, watching as they left. Scarlet's father recovered in the following months, but no matter how hard they worked, they couldn't make enough to repay the debt. The bank's calls became relentless, each one a reminder of their looming deadline. They threatened to seize the house and the small pastry shop, which they had used as collateral. These were the only things the family had. If the bank collected their properties, where would they start from? Their daughter, Scarlet, a bright, jovial, and beautiful 30-year-old graduate, worked in a small company, but her salary barely covered her student loan payments. No matter how much she wished to help her parents, her hands were tied. However, she sent them whatever little she could spare. One afternoon, Henry's father's driver stopped by the pastry shop to buy some snacks. While waiting, he made a phone call. His voice carried over the counter, and Scarlet's parents exchanged glances as they overheard snippets of his conversation. Yes, Mr. Henry's parents are looking for a wife for him. He won't choose one himself, so they're handling it. Scarlet's mother's hand froze mid-motion. Her husband looked at her, and without a word, they both understood. They had found a way out. That night, they called Scarlet into the sitting room. She sat across from them, exhausted from work, but curious about the serious expressions on their faces. "Scarlet," her mother started gently, "you know about our debt and how the bank has been calling us repeatedly." Scarlet sighed. "Yes, Mom, I know. I just don't have enough to help." Her father cleared his throat. "We heard something today. Henry's parents are looking for a wife for their son." Scarlet frowned. "Okay, but how does that concern me?" Her mother hesitated before saying, "What if you marry him to repay our debt?" Scarlet's breath caught. "What?" Her father pleaded. "I'm so sorry to ask you to do this, but we have no other way. The deadline is this month. If we don't pay, we lose everything. Our home, the shop. It's been a year, and we've only saved about 3/10 of what we owe." Scarlet stared at them in disbelief. Wait, did Henry's father even suggest this? Did he ask to be your in-law? Her parents exchanged guilty looks before shaking their heads. Scarlet scoffed. "So, what's the plan? You're just going to walk into his house and beg him to take me as payment? This is so embarrassing." Her mother reached for her hand. "Scarlet, don't worry about how we'll do it. Just pray it works." Scarlet pulled her hand away, shaking her head. She stood up and left the room without another word. Her parents, however, had already made up their minds and began working on their plan. The next day, Scarlet's parents arrived at Henry's father's house. The gate swung open, and they were led into the sitting room. Scarlet's parents sat in front of Henry's parents. The air was tense as Henry's father leaned back in his chair, studying them with an unreadable expression. "Are you here to pay your loan?" he asked, his tone sharp. After a moment of silence, Scarlet's father cleared his throat. "No, sir, but we have a proposal. We would like to offer our daughter's hand in marriage as repayment for our debt." Henry's father raised an eyebrow, then scoffed. "I won't ask how you found out we're looking for a wife for my son, but you want to trade your daughter for the money you owe me?" With a cold gaze, he leaned forward and said, "How do I know your daughter is worth my money? Or do you expect me to trade that huge sum for something useless?" Scarlet's parents exchanged glances. They were prepared for his resistance and arrogance, but not to the level they encountered. Of course, Henry's father had been polite during his first visits to their shop. But the day they stepped into his house to take the loan, they saw his true nature, cold and arrogant, and his wife, even worse. Scarlet's mother took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Sir, our daughter is intelligent, well-educated, and hard-working. She is—" Henry's father raised a hand, cutting her off. He turned to his wife, who had been silently watching, then back to them and said, "Enough of this your non-stop talking. Come back next week with your daughter." With heavy hearts, they left Henry's house.